like my younger brother and his fiance or his wife now have a healthy relationship, and I see that, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what's that like. I've yet to experience that, but like, you know, it's cool today that I'm capable of, you know, having meaningful, like healthy relationships, not even just romantically, but like with other people where you can share your feelings and stuff like that.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rise, Recover, Live, the podcast. I am your host, Bryce III.
And I am your other host, Liz McKean. And we're so thrilled to have you here and really excited to welcome our guest on the podcast today. Bryce, I'm going to throw it to you to introduce our very cool guests that we can't wait to talk to.
So today's guest, I met up in Grand Rapids. I'm here in Detroit, Michigan, and we went up for an event in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and met a lot of cool people up there. We have a chapter up there. Program coordinator Dan Post is like one of the best people in the world that I know. And one of the people that I met up there in Grand Rapids is our guest today. And so he works with an organization called Guiding Light, and he does a lot of cool work up there, as well as he has his own podcast up there too. With that organization. So I'm going to let him tell his story versus me trying to bumble around and tell his story for him. But without further ado, I'd like for you all to welcome Doug Pancy. And that's where like the applause comes in out of nowhere.
I know, I was ready for it.
Nice.
Welcome, Doug.
Can we plug in that effect? Get an applause effect going in there. Anyway, hi guys.
What's up, Doug?
What's up? Yeah, I remember I met Bryce at the Illuminate the Day event that was going on for the benefit of the Phoenix chapter in Grand Rapids, and then also the Windy Willow Foundation, which is a local nonprofit here that benefits people with trying to get access to mental health treatment and stuff like that. I was just a participant in it, but I am close with the Phoenix. I go to their CrossFit classes that Dan has, you know, every Monday and Thursday. Well, every Monday for the most part. I'm probably not going to go today, but yeah, I don't know. I remember at the time I don't want to say that I have a podcast, but the organization that I work for, Guiding Light, has a podcast that I produce. And Guiding Light is a free substance abuse treatment program offered to men in Grand Rapids. It's also where I got sober, so that's my connection to that organization. And we had just started our podcast called Casting Light around the time that I first met Bryce. So I was just looking all over just for anybody to be on. So that's how we met. And then I noticed like a month later, I noticed that you guys had one. And then I didn't recognize that it was the Bryce that I met there at first. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Because I know I got one of your business cards, and I looked it up. I was like, oh, it's this guy, which I thought was cool. So I reached out to him, and hopefully we can have you on. I was thinking November. I think last time we talked, you said like November when Mickey Paw is happening.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm happy to be on this one, and I like everything you guys do. And the Phoenix has been very important for me and for so many people. Not only I can see it personally, like from guys that have come through my organization, Guiding Light, but there's a lot of people out there who utilize your services. I think it's great.
That's so awesome.
So hi.
Well, we're so thrilled that you're here, and I'm excited. I feel like we've had a few instances on this podcast where I've brought somebody on that I've known their story a little bit, and Bryce has been kind of coming in a little more blind, and now I get to have that pleasure of just learning everything for the first time. So I'm excited. You know, we've also talked a little bit about how so many people in just the recovery community period, but like also within the Phoenix community, which a lot of that is our audience here, have experience with, actual formal treatment. And I don't think we've talked a ton about that. So I'm really interested to hear your story. And I'm also excited to just hear a little bit about what that just kind of institution is like as far as just treatment in, I know it's different in every single state and every single center, but I don't know if you want to start a little bit with your story. I think that would be amazing.
Feel like everybody's story is kind of the same in a little bit, but I mean, I started using drugs and alcohol when I was about like 13, 14 years old. And I did a lot of drugs in high school and had a lot of fun. And then I remember when I turned, the funny thing about like being that age is that it was easier for me to get access to like harder drugs than it was for me to get access to alcohol. And the irony behind that. Mm-hmm. And, but as soon as I turned 21, that's when I realized like, I don't have to go through any middlemen or anything like that to like achieve my goal, which was ultimately always to just turn everything off. That's all I wanted, was to escape. So when I turned 21, alcohol is absolutely my DOC. And as soon as I turned that age, and that enabled me to be able to isolate, because that's the kind of user I am, that was pretty much off to the races. And I mean, yeah, I got sober through treatment, but I've been trying to get sober, I think, more or less for the past, 7-8 years, with varying degrees of success and varying degrees of desperation, I think. It didn't matter how many times I found myself in a detox or in a treatment center or in jail, that, nothing really ever took. And, I'm not here to like sell, the treatment center that I got sober in. I think it just happened to be where I washed up, at the point where I was sufficiently desperate to try something different, and the fact that it was free, at least financially, was probably one of the biggest reasons why why I ended up there. Because I've been to, I think there's a big problem when it comes to. I think there's a huge problem when it comes to the profit motivation behind substance abuse treatment. And I'm very glad to be a part of an organization that just kind of cut that out entirely. That being said, like for me, my experience at Guiding Light with treatment was, like you have to take it seriously. You're going to get kicked out. Like it's very no joke, sort of like a sort of thing. So I'm grateful today that I had such a rigorous treatment program that I went through. And I'm a believer that like anybody. You can get, if you want to get sober, you can get sober. But I think it's very nice that it was made relatively easy for me, because it's very long term. It's 4 months. I spent 4 months in there. I lived there for 6 months. And then I moved out into sober living, which was also a part of their organization. So all the time, my entire time span of early sobriety I was surrounded by a community of people who are also in the same boat as me and who I was friends with. And as somebody who's very much an isolator, somebody who really can get in a bad place when I'm alone too much, and somebody who I did not believe that having community in my life and having friendships and real relationships with other human beings was an option for me, because I've always been very introverted and I don't want to say antisocial, but that's what a lot of people called me in middle school and high school and stuff like that. And it kind of hurt my feelings, but that was an identity that I took on. And I think, today, yeah, I'm still pretty introverted, but I have meaningful relationships today with other people, and I think that's one of the most important things, and one of the biggest differences I think this time. I mean, there's a ton of things that are different. I got a sponsor. I actually worked a real program. I became willing to see that having a healthy spiritual condition was a key component to me recovering. But it's like everything. There's a ton of stuff. Physical fitness is a big thing for me now. Expressing myself is a big thing. Having a life today that's worth staying sober for is a big thing. So, I don't really know where to go from there, but
well, I'm just wondering, since you started as early as you did, like with drugs at, 13, 14, and then, graduated into alcohol once you were legal to have alcohol. It feels like you probably didn't have the opportunity, having isolated, having kind of like just turned off your brain for all those years. You probably didn't have an opportunity to really get to know who you even were. Like it kind of makes sense that you would just take on whatever identity was assigned to you because you weren't able to really figure that out or, even develop it. So what did it feel like when you got sober? It was like you kind of starting at age 13, like kind of creating that sense of self.
Well, yeah, it's like, I don't know how scientifically accurate this is, but I think it's a pretty good summation of how the brain works, at least in my experience, is like, they say the human brain isn't fully formed or developed until you're 25 years old.
Yeah.
And I've also heard, and once again, I don't know how brain scientifically accurate this is, but I've
You're
also
not a
heard
neuroscientist? What the heck?
No, I'm not. I'm working on it. But when you start using, your brain pretty much stops developing the way that it's supposed to. Mm-hmm. So for all intents and purposes, it's like, I got sober almost 3 years ago. So I was 27. So let's say, I don't know, I'm like 17 now, basically, like emotionally mature, likewise. People always said I was mature for my age. So, I mean, maybe I'm a little more than that, but I was like completely stunted. I think it's safe to say. And I think you bring up a really good point by saying that, I definitely, one that I don't think I've actually heard put so succinctly before is that, I jumped from identity to identity to identity, not even knowing where to start to figure out who I actually am. So I was like a punk in 8th grade, you know what I mean? I had the jacket with all the patches on it and stuff like that. And then I jumped into the stoner kid identity, you know what I mean? And honestly, viewing my drug use when it was in high school was started out as a way for me to be part of a community that accepted me. You know what I mean? At least as far as I could tell. That's ultimately what I was always looking for, is just an identity that works for me. And, it just so happens that I really liked drugs, but, I certainly had no idea who I was. And I don't think I did. I mean, I think it's safe to say maybe today I'm living as authentically as I can. Mm-hmm. I do believe I'm kind of living as an authentic version of myself today to the best of my ability. But I certainly was not doing that before, even though I wanted that. There's, it's when you're, when all you care about is using, you don't know where to begin when it comes to figuring out who you are.
Yeah, and I think what recovery allows for, how you say you 17, which I think in all actuality, I think you may be a little bit older than me. But what I've come to discover is there's so many things that, I never had a conversation about boundaries. I just learned about boundaries 2 years ago. Yeah. I heard the word, but I didn't know what it was like to be implementing or be a recipient of someone implementing boundaries and how to respect those boundaries. And so, there's still a lot of growth and development to be had always, for real. And I think recovery is tapping into that process of being receptive to that growth versus running away from life's potential opportunities to cultivate strength and wisdom. Mm-hmm. And now we're in it. When you say living authentically, it's now we're an active participant in our experience. Yeah. And that can be brand new to some. So I got a couple of questions. One was, so you said you spent about 7-8 years trying to get sober. So in that process, how many times did you try to do it by yourself? And if there were times that you tried to do it by yourself, in contrast to, this time at Guiding Light where you did it with community, what were the differences and what was different this time?
Well, I'll say this. I think with regards to my success rate, I don't think I ever made it longer than unless I was in treatment. I've been to long-term treatment one other time. I've been in detox a bunch of times, but that's just because I don't want to die. But I think I knew that I had a problem pretty much right away. I think probably, but I always thought it was cool, being 15 years old and being able to take more pills than anybody else, or being able to drink more than everybody else, or anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I always knew that I wasn't normal. I think when I turned 21, I kind of realized that I was definitely not normal. But I think the obsession I kind of the obsession that kind of carried me through my using years was, I'm not going to give up on using. So how do I be one of these mythical functioning drug addicts and alcoholics that I look up to so adoringly,
Mm-hmm.
And I think, the first time I went to detox was when I was 22. And that was after I had my first seizure from alcohol withdrawals. And, every time I found myself in that position, I really did want to stop, for a bit. I knew through my various interactions with treatment, and then, having to go to AA for court issues and stuff like that. I've ran into those people, who are in recovery and they have something that you want, they have a life, they're living some sort of life that it's man, if I could just get sober, I could be like that. The problem is that doesn't happen once you stop, right away. It takes a lot of hard work, unfortunately. And I was never, ever willing to put in that hard work. I think early on in, every time I tried it, I had these thoughts of man, I gotta get sober. Every time I would try and fail, every time I would come back, I would be more and more desperate, but I wasn't desperate enough. I wanted to figure out, how do I get some serenity in my life? How do I live this life that I see these other people have? But how do I do it without having to give up on, my ego? And how do I keep, what I perceive as my own sense of individuality or something like that? I have more individuality probably today than I ever did, but, I believed that there's an identity that I still wanted to hold on to, I think. That's a really good way to put it. Thank you. I was losing it for a second. I was I was never, ever willing to surrender. And I wasn't willing to surrender it was, 2.5 years ago now, either. But I was so desperate that I just had no other options. You know what I mean? The pain was finally so great. And, I'm a big proponent of, I'm a big proponent that you got to have had enough before sobriety finally, before it takes, which is a dangerous thing. Unfortunately, people die. And that's sad. But I'm glad that I really drank and used the fun out of my life instead of half-assing recovery for, God knows how long.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really give recovery a real honest chance, I don't think, until the last time I did. I always kind of joke to myself that at some point I'm going to have to get sober. Ha ha ha, but I was never, ever willing to take the steps to do that.
Yeah. Gosh,
So what is
I remember, sorry, Bryce, I just have to say this, and I know neither of you are going to relate to this, so I apologize. But I remember for years thinking, someday I'll have a baby. Someday I'll get pregnant, and then I'll stop drinking. Like, that'll be the thing. Like, I don't have to even worry about it till then. It's like you think that thing's going to happen. Yeah. It really is just another version of what you're talking about. Yeah. And then I decided not to have kids, and I was like, oh crap. We're all in really big trouble now.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm sorry, Bryce.
Yeah, I have a sponsee, and when he first came in, he didn't get like beat up a lot, and so like he whatever led him there, right? Like, you're here because you were led here, right? But he felt like he didn't get beat up as much as he heard like shared from other people's stories, and he was doing a thing where I was always taught like, you relate, you don't like seek to relate, don't compare. And so he was listening to other people's stories. Some people eating out of trash cans, some people got in car accidents, some people got DUIs. He don't have any of those experiences. And at the time, he wasn't my sponsor. He was working with this other guy. And he was like, yeah, man, I feel like something bad gonna have to happen to me for me to be able to, stop. And then the guy he was working with, it was like, let's replay what it is that you just said. Like, do you feel that you have to, do you have to die for you to learn? Like, do you have to kill somebody else for you to learn? And for that combination of words for him clicked and allowed for him to like, oh, nah, that's actually not what I want. And then he dove in, and that's the Disney version of kind of like, oh, it clicked, because for me, like, I needed a little bit more nudging. Yeah. But it's funny how you and I do quite a bit of teaching, and so like when I first started like teaching, I first was like learning how to siphon, like, why is this working? How did this work? And there's still a lot of ways that I don't know why or how it worked for me, right? Because there's people that did a lot more that aren't here to tell a story. There's people that went through a lot. It's like, why, I don't know. But the desperation point was a big thing for me, because I was so beat down that they could have handed me a book written in Aramaic and then told me to read it backwards, and that will stop you from drinking. I would have did it, so that desperation point, I think, cracks us and gives us the ability to have the receptivity for the tools that get help us to cultivate like recovery. For real. I mean,
it's funny because it's like, when I was like 22, I think that was actually like, pure weight and amount was probably the worst my using ever was when I was 22, 23 years old. That's when I got, that's when I got a DUI that blew 4 times the legal limit. And I was still like, I was fine, like that's how bad my tolerance was. That's when I was at probably my most dangerous, and I was most likely to die or to kill somebody else. But like, that's just goes to show you how screwed up in the head I am. Like, I didn't think once about seriously trying to get sober. You know what I mean? That was never like, I kind of joked about it or whatnot, but like, you'd think that would be the wake up call to a rational person. That's what a wake up call would be. But I was not spiritually desperate and destitute yet. I think I did a lot of growing as a person. And I think actually, to my credit, became a much better person in the years after that. I did a lot to better myself. But I was still an alcoholic. I was still a drug addict. And it wasn't until I was just spiritually dead that I could be at a point where, like you said, somebody could hand me, a book written in like Morse code or something like that. And I'd have to learn how to do that or whatever. Like, I remember specifically when I came into treatment the last time being like just having this attitude of like, look, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it, because I cannot figure this out for my own. And, I have a sponsee who's like, he's around the same age I am. He just had a seizure, and there's still this like this ego in this person that says like that you got some ideas that nobody else can give you. You know what I mean? And I think I think the biggest thing was I was finally beat down enough, and that had no correlation with how much I was drinking or how, whether or not I was eating out of garbage cans or anything like that. You know what I mean? It was just spiritually dead, and, rock bottom is what you make it. You can, it's up to you to decide if that is it or not, so it really has nothing to do with like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm advocating for people to keep using until they hit some sort of mythical brick wall, you know what I mean? But like, I certainly wish I could have figured it out sooner, but that was the case for me, that I had to keep going long enough to just be like, wow, like I am dead inside, Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, you're not reasonable. There is no reason in there when I mean, your brain's been hijacked. Like, I mean, you'll be shocked to know that I'm also not a neuroscientist, but my understanding is that like when there's an addiction happening in your brain, like your survival has been hijacked. Like the part of you that is like, this is what I need to survive has been taken over, like the call's coming from inside of the house. You've got something in you, the part in you that says you need to take that next breath, the part in you that says you need to make sure that you eat something or else you're going to starve to death. That part is saying you need this substance or some substance or something to escape in order to survive. So like, you can't trust that same voice to be like, oh, also you should stop doing this because it's going to kill you. It's because like, no, because that's telling you that you need this and everything else is going to stop is going to kill you. So it really, like, desperation is just like, it's almost like just a moment, it's just that tiny little moment where suddenly like there's that little realization, like, wait a minute, like maybe that's not right. Maybe the thing I think I need to survive is actually the thing that's killing me. But very quickly that door will close. And then it's like, nope, just kidding. Shut all that else, all the other, stuff out. I need to get this thing. So I think, it's not linear and it's not always clear and it comes and goes. And, I think all you need to know is that there's like a better way. That's
why they call it the gift of desperation. Like when you get that little hit of inspiration that where your brain might be thinking a little bit logically for the first time in your life, like you really got to run and hold on to that. And, that's why, for me, treatment was the best way for me to go, because just how crazy I am. Like, I was like, just lock me up. Like I cannot, like, I gotta stop this. Like, and I'm just amazed at people who like who do get clean, like who don't go to treatment for years, I'm amazed. I'm amazed it took, at least as far as today is concerned, after only a couple, 4 months for me, but that's me, and everybody's story is different.
So what does recovery look like on this side of the fence? Like you've mentioned a couple of times before, like, I don't think I've ever lived as authentic as I'm living now, or I don't think I've ever had some of the experiences that I'm having now. So what has your life turned out to be now? I mean, you're a host to the podcast of an organization. I know when we were talking, we kind of traded some of the tools of the trade. We were talking about our cameras and stuff like that. So like, what are you into? What does recovery look like for you now spiritually? Like, paint that picture for us.
I mean, it's crazy because it's like, I haven't had the compulsion, to pick up in a long time. And that's something that ruled my life, every day for so many years. And, like, over a decade. And, I think now, I'm still just as messed up as I always was, like in the head, which is, it's like, it's exciting that I get to learn these lessons in life. Like I still don't get what I want all the time. I still, things, don't work out exactly the way I want them to. I still like to plan my future, and then, I like to get every little duck in the row, and then inevitably it doesn't work out. And, I'm in a place now where I can have some gratitude for these lessons that I learned in my life. Um, like I alluded to earlier, like it's cool that I have real meaningful friendships in my life. Um, it's cool that I have a job that I really like. I'm I'm going back to finish my bachelor's degree finally. I'm well, um, it's I'm a history major, and it has absolutely no relevance to what I am doing professionally or what I'm going to doing or will be doing professionally for the rest of my life. But whatever. I'm trying. I already spent all the money, so so I got one semester left. So the fact that I can do stuff like that, I just one of my sponsees just had a birthday the other day, and we all went to Craig's Cruisers and did stuff, and which is a mini golf laser tag kind of place. I'm sure people have those.
You are 17. That's fun.
Yeah. Well, it's so weird that I'm capable of enjoying that.
Totally.
It's so weird that I get up and I'm not haunted by this compulsion that I've always had. It's literally I just, it's such a trip even thinking about it now, because I don't think about this very often. It's what do I do with my time? I've spent my entire life I've spent my entire life being ruled by drugs and alcohol, and I would work, and I would do other things and whatever, but how did I ever get to a point where I'm capable of handling life like this? There's things that I have to do. I'm a big proponent of 12-step stuff. I'm not a Bible thumper when it comes to that, but for me, it's very helpful. I am a big proponent of, keeping my spirituality intact. I was raised Catholic, but I'm not religious. But I do, I pray to the universe or whatever you want to call it every morning. And I say, I ask for one day of sobriety. And then at the end of the day, I say, thank you if if I make it, and that's been working out for me. I have a sponsor. I work with sponsees. I don't know. I game. I'm on a softball team. I've had meaningful romantic relationships finally, that aren't, out of control. I always kind of joked. It's in theory, my younger brother and his fiance or his wife now, have a healthy relationship. And I see that and I'm like, I wonder what's that like. I've yet to experience that, but it's cool today that I'm capable of, having meaningful, healthy relationships, not even just romantically, but with other people where you can share your feelings and stuff like that. And, and staying healthy is a big thing for me, and and staying busy, but not to the extent that it drives me insane, because I'm one of those people that just loves chaos. That's one thing that hasn't changed, just because I put the drugs and the alcohol away doesn't mean I'm still crazy, but, I don't know. I'm one of these people too, that I've always been really depressed, isolated, anxious, even before I started using. That was a big part of who I really was. I always felt like I didn't fit into this existence, whatever you want to call it. I had a lot of suicidal ideation growing up. I felt like I just didn't belong, and like I said, that's been a constant with me throughout my addiction and before it. And that's why today I can say that I'm grateful that like I've gone through the trials and tribulations that I have with addiction, because the cool thing about being in recovery from substance abuse addiction is that like I know normal people and they're just as screwed up as I am.
There's no such thing, actually.
Yeah, but like, well, right, but like, you know what I'm saying though, like they don't have like an outline to figure out how to be like a happy, healthy, functioning adult. I'm grateful today that I was, through no fault of my, like through no agency of my own, I just happened to end up in a community of people that is, so supportive and so helpful. And there's so many years of wisdom, the collective wisdom and philosophy to guide people, because, my sponsor told me this in early recovery and I didn't believe it, but it's like, putting down the drugs and the alcohol is like the least of your problems. And that was certainly the case for me. Like I was still real screwed up in the head and I had to figure out how to live life, as a functioning adult. And as a result of that today, like I am happy. I feel like I know who I am. I feel like I present myself to the world in an authentic manner. And, I have a life today that's worth staying sober for. And that's just an incredible gift that, I wouldn't have had if it wasn't for, every drug and every drink that I took. So, I really am grateful for that today.
That's awesome. I think it's cool that you have so many words to describe like who you are and what you enjoy and the things that you do, like as a person who, like we said, like didn't really connect with an identity outside of the ones that were kind of like assigned to you, and you were just reaching for an identity, and then the drugs, the alcohol became kind of the identity. And then I don't know about you, but for me, in early recovery, being a person in recovery becomes your identity. And sometimes it feels is that just who I am now? Is this just all I'm going to be forever? But then because of all the work that you did do and those relationships that you formed, like you went out there and now, I mean, you can't even decide on one. There's so many parts of you. You have such a, beautiful, complex tapestry of an identity, of like a personality of this person that you are. You have joy. Like you're able to say, I am happy. Like, did you ever think you'd be a person that would be like, I'm happy? Just be able to say
Absolutely not. No. Like, honestly, as I said that, I'm like, it's very weird and surreal that I'm saying that.
I was waiting to ask you that. And then you just said it. And I was like, oh, you just made my day. That's amazing.
No, it's so weird. Like, but the craziest thing is like, I'm not lying. It's funny that I spent so much of my life just being like, yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Also, you're dead on about the whole, like, I'm a person in recovery. That's my identity. I mean, that's, that's something I struggled with the first year a lot,
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely.
I think that's cool.
And I think like such is life. Like such is life in recovery for sure. But like in living intentionally, like we learn how to be compassionate with our process and show up and unfold. And when you share things like, I went laser tagging and, mini golfing, and I've had a healthy relationship and I game. And to somebody like me, that sounds like a fulfilled life. Like that sounds like, I was watching a music video the other day and they're just having fun, happy, and they're in a kayak, and then the sun is shining and they sitting at the park and they just enjoying each other as like a group of friends. And it's like, I'm watching this like, oh, dang, I want that. And then like, I remember like, oh, like I have that. Like I have that. I've had that experience. Yeah. And it's those moments. It was like the other night, I'm sitting, and even in how you said, like, some of the things that in your life previously, like, are still there, and it's like learning to show up for them and use them in ways that perpetuate your health. So like with the wanting chaos or with like the needing things going on, like learning to deploy that in such a way that empowers you now versus the way that before, like it was kind of just something that ran rapid because we weren't intentional about it. Like we can use those aspects of us too. It's like learning how to reframe some of the things that are inherent within us, and just building a new relationship with ourselves that allows for us to like really be there with us. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about recovery is the developing relationship that we begin to cultivate with ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think you just illustrated that perfectly.
Having any relationship with yourself at all,
Yeah. Liking yourself enough to even care to try.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I mean, I remember around like through eighth grade to like age like 23, like I had this involuntary tick where like, I would say to myself, at least once, usually several times a day, that I hate myself and I'm going to kill myself. Now, I mean, is it true that like how much of this is just some sort of like goofy thing I said, whatever. Suicide is cool when you're young, like edgy, whatever. But the point is that I spent years saying that to myself every day. And I have to imagine that had quite, an involuntarily like psychological impact on me, and I was around like 23, 24 or something. Like I said earlier, like I have done a lot of work on myself even during my addiction years, but like, I remember switching it around and just saying like, you know what, like whenever you have that urge or that tick or whatever, just say, I love myself. And I started doing that. And, that was, when I started doing that, what triggered me to do that, I was probably the closest to actually killing myself as I ever have been. And, it's amazing how much of a switch that actually made for me. Now I was also put on, I also started taking some medication, which is a totally dangerous and weird thing to do, especially as I was also, I was also prescribed to Adderall and benzos, and I started taking Wellbutrin in addition to that, because I remember I talked to my doctor and I was like, I think I'm bipolar. And it's like, of course you think you're bipolar, you're an alcoholic and you're addicted to amphetamines. So, I mean, that's some sort of perfect storm or something like that of things. I started taking Wellbutrin and I started saying I love myself instead of I hate myself, and I'm going to kill myself. But I think that's just a testament to how important being kind to yourself is, and how much of an impact that probably had on me was how unkind I was to myself during my formative years. It's a miracle I'm not way more screwed up than I am.
And I think that's like the perfect segue into Liz's special question. So Liz has a special question that she likes to ask all our guests as we wrap up our podcast episodes. And so she tends to approach this question differently every episode. And I'm excited to see how she presents this question today. Liz, go on ahead, take it away.
Oh boy, Bryce hypes it up, so it feels bigger than it is. So we just like to ask everybody what kind of message you might give to a previous version of yourself, knowing that previous versions of you are probably listening to this podcast. And like you said, words are powerful. So there's that version of yourself that still lives in there, in you. So what words would you share with another Doug?
I think, don't take this life too seriously. Like it's not, so much of my addiction was fueled by a sense of hopelessness, and and there's no hope for my future or anything like that. And I think I honestly, like, I don't know if this is appropriate, but it's like, be careful. And, when you're ready, there's an off ramp. I think what kept me away so long was like, I only knew about like one prescribed way to get sober. And that was, go to meetings, every day and have, some people that are twice your age yell at you. And like, I wasn't aware that there were other people like me, like my age, in the same predicament, and I thought I was just doomed. I thought I was just, I had a unique problem that no proven technique could fix or anything like that. I think I would say that, like, you're not alone and you're not that special.
I love it.
Heavy on the you're not that special.
Oh yeah.
Which is crazy because you hear that and it's like, oh, that sounds like that would be disempowering. But it's like once somebody shared their story and it sounded like it was my story coming out of their mouth, it was like, oh, I'm not as terminally unique as I thought I was, and maybe there's a solution for me.
It's the whole reason for this podcast.
Yeah. Well, it's the thing with surrender too. It's like, naturally as a human being, we have an aversion to the concept of surrendering to anything, but it's like me surrendering and admitting my powerlessness over a specific aspect of my life has afforded me way more freedom than I ever had. Like I certainly surrendered, like, this is a cliche, but it's like, I certainly surrendered to my addiction, so.
Such a paradox.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Bryce and I both leaned forward at the exact same time because we're in sync like that. Doug, I know we didn't talk a whole lot about your podcast and about Guiding Light, but is there anything that you'd like to share before we wrap up, and also places folks can find more information about those and hear you on that podcast?
Yeah. So I produce a podcast for Guiding Light called Casting Light. And that is available on, basically it's just kind of it's a lot like this, right? It's talking about recovery a lot more conversationally. Not so much on the war stories and how bad life it was, but what's working for you today, so we have people around. Grand Rapids, Michigan has a very vibrant and close-knit recovery community. So we have a lot of people just from around there who are, friends of ours. And I think it's pretty good. You can figure that out for yourself. So the show is called Casting Light, and you can find us on YouTube. Just search Casting Light Podcast, or Casting Light's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. We also have a TikTok channel. If that's a more accessible way for you to dive into it, they're like, an hour, sometimes an hour and a half long. So
you can do that on TikTok? You can do an hour and a half on TikTok?
No, I put like clips on there though.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And there's clips on our YouTube channel too. Because I know when somebody's asking me to commit to listening to a podcast, it's hard to commit to anything longer than a minute. So I would also recommend, if you do want to listen to it, I think some more accessible episodes are probably 10 through 14. I think we've been kind of getting off the reservation a little bit lately in our last couple ones. So anyway, that's something I'm really proud of. And if you want to know more about Guiding Light, it's a free inpatient substance abuse treatment program offered to men right now. Unfortunately, it's only for men. We are trying to get a women's program up and running. But Guiding Light as an organization has been around since like 1929 in Grand Rapids. And you can find out more about it at www.guidinglightworks.org. And you can find out about what we do or anything like that. You can check out our blog. I write all of those. And if you want to check out our Vimeo page, vimeo.com/guidinglightworks, that's all the stuff that I've made. That's it.
And we'll link that all. We'll link everything in the show notes. So if folks are, and if there's anything that you missed that you want to let me know, we'll make sure that we'll get it in the show notes so people can find out more. And I'm excited to listen to your podcast. Cool. Like I said, when we first hopped on, I was like, you got a great podcasting voice. Like I could definitely listen to that voice.
Thank you.
Turn it on for a long time.
Cool. All right. Cool. Yeah. I'm just trying to learn how to, we used to have a guy do our podcast, and it wasn't that good. And I was just kind of I work in
we'll hope he's not listening.
Well, sorry. But it wasn't that good. And once again, it was people who aren't really in recovery, they think the most compelling thing about recovery is the war stories and stuff like that. And it's those of us who've been through it are we've heard the same story over and over again. So to me, the thing that's more compelling is, what are you doing today? What's working for you today? And so I was just kind of so I work in nonprofit development for Guiding Light, and I was just I don't know, screw it, I'll record it. I started working there because, when I was in the program, that's when COVID happened. And so all of the everybody, all the staff and everything like that left, and all of us in the rehab program, there was 30 of us, were stuck in there. And I was the house manager at the time, and the person who eventually became my boss asked if we could get some videos and articles or whatever about what's going on in there, because nobody knows what's going on there. It was really insane. Literally the inmates running the asylum. But so I just had a cell phone and Windows Movie Maker, and I started making stuff, and eventually that's transferred into what I do today. And I'm really into filmmaking, if that's what you want to call it, or and production and media production and stuff like that. And that's just been, like I said, I'm a history major, so it's not really relevant. Those two things are not very relevant, but that's kind of my passion now. And the podcast is an extension of that. So I'm very proud of it. I think it looks pretty good. I think it sounds pretty good, and you should check it out. I don't think it's that bad. So.
Yeah, and I look forward to sliding over there and kicking it with you all when I come up there in November. So it'll be
awesome.
Dope. It'll be dope. Well, thanks, Doug, for coming on. We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
having you on, and
Yeah. Thanks everybody for joining us. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you join us every week. Episodes drop every single Tuesday. If you'd be so kind as to leave us a rating and review, it really helps folks find us. Or if you got some value out of this episode, just share it, send it to a friend, send it to somebody you think would enjoy it. And
do that. It really helps.
It really, really does.
Yeah.
Well,
you got to bump that algorithm up.
Heck yeah. Well, I appreciate you, Doug, and you, Bryce, and all of you listening, and we will catch you next time.
All right.
See you later.
See ya. Thanks.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you, or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.